The private thought you just had was not yours, but a command issued by the crowd you believe you are resisting. You freeze mid-sentence, editing your responses or adopting a safe, neutral posture to avoid friction. This shows the Jungian persona is not a mask you put on, but an autonomous collective force dominating your mind. Your internal anxiety is not a personal flaw, but the objective psyche dismantling the ego to demand immediate individuation. The modern human mind operates under a permanent gravitational pull. This force is the invisible weight of the collective opinion. It shapes choices before conscious thought even occurs. It dictates what feels safe, acceptable, or dangerous. No individual lives outside this unseen field of psychological pressure. It functions exactly like physical gravity, silent and absolute. Personal preferences are heavily weighted by the expectations of the crowd. The illusion of isolated personal choice quickly dissolves under close observation. You do not select convictions from an objective menu. They are pushed into awareness by the massive weight of the environment. The crowd defines the boundaries of your sanity. It sets the limits of your desires. It constructs the language of your internal monologue. The individual mind becomes an echo chamber for external expectations. Autonomy is surrendered long before it is even understood. Your identity is a borrowed garment. You wear it to satisfy the gaze of others. Your choices reflect their fears. The collective consciousness dictates the rhythm of your days. An individual sits motionless in a brightly lit office, keeping their breathing shallow to avoid attracting attention. This calculated physical restraint demonstrates the draining energetic cost of maintaining the persona before an audience. You look down at your phone to avoid making eye contact with an approaching acquaintance. This instinctual physical deflection reveals the ego hiding behind a sterile shield to prevent an unchoreographed human encounter. You nod in agreement during a meeting while feeling a cold knot of dissent form in your stomach. This immediate somatic contradiction proves that your physical body rejects the compliance your ego is performing. A sudden wave of profound exhaustion hits during a casual conversation, causing the shoulders to drop. This physical collapse marks the exact moment the conscious mind fails to sustain its artificial social performance. This creates a profound systemic trap within the human architecture. The conscious ego strives desperately to achieve social harmony and complete safety. Yet, the deeper structures of the psyche actively sabotage this pursuit of comfort. The more perfectly a person conforms to the collective expectation, the more intense their inner emptiness becomes. This internal friction is a deliberate mechanism designed to shatter the illusions of the conscious mind. Safety within the crowd demands the absolute surrender of individual truth. But the objective psyche refuses to remain permanently suppressed within an artificial mold. It begins to project anxiety and unrest into everyday life. This tension is not an accidental malfunction of the brain. It is an intentional, destructive pressure meant to break the ego apart. The psyche initiates a silent warfare against its own survival strategies. The cost of remaining unchanged becomes far greater than the terror of absolute collapse. The comfort you guard so fiercely transforms into a psychological prison. The comfortable reliance on social consensus has now turned into a closed trap. The mind must now confront the darker mechanisms that dictate its choices from behind the veil of conscious awareness. You carefully craft your words in an everyday conversation, deleting mental drafts before speaking to ensure absolute alignment with the expectations of the room. You feel a sense of security in this careful adaptation. The safety is a lie. By polishing away your unique edges, you are actively participating in your own erasure. The ego believes it is practicing survival diplomacy. In reality, it is executing its own individuality. Your thoughts are pre-filtered by the collective before they ever reach your conscious awareness. This creates a terrifying psychological paradox. The more effortlessly you fit into the social machine, the more alien you become to yourself. When the ego builds a flawless wall of compliance, an invisible counterweight begins to shift in the darkness. This is the autonomous layer of the objective psyche, a cold, self-regulating structural law that operates entirely by its own rules. It does not care about your social comfort or your carefully managed reputation. Like gravity, It is completely indifferent to your small desires, yet it possesses a profound self-correcting intelligence designed to restore psychological balance. If you compress your true nature to appease the crowd, this force will dismantle your life. It overrides your conscious intent through sudden, unprovoked somatic compliance failures. It manifests as a paralyzing panic attack in a room full of smiling faces. It breaks through as an unexplained, heavy sorrow during a moment of outward praise. Your internal suffering is not an emotional malfunction. It is a calculated intervention. You are being hunted by your own hidden reality. The civilized persona you present to the outer world is constantly being subverted by the raw weight of the unconscious. Every compromise you make to remain accepted adds immense pressure to this volcanic reservoir. The anxiety that ruins your daily comfort is actually a precise diagnostic tool, revealing that the social identity you guard so fiercely is a total fiction. The false self must be broken so that the genuine individual can finally emerge from the wreckage. This realization provides a partial escape, yet it instantly locks you into an even tighter systemic dead end. If the very mind you use to analyze your captivity has already surrendered its autonomy to the crowd, then even your desperate desire to break free is likely just another script handed to you by the collective. You walk into an unfamiliar room and immediately feel an intense wave of hostility toward a complete stranger. Your jaw tightens without your conscious permission. Your posture shifts into a defensive stance before you even process their presence. The conscious ego immediately begins fabricating logical reasons for this sudden animosity. It blames their clothes, their posture, or the tone of their voice. This rapid rationalization is an illusion designed to protect your self-image. In reality, you are experiencing a profound somatic distortion of perception. This encounter demonstrates the hidden physics of the objective psyche. It operates through the absolute law of psychological projection. The attributes you strictly suppress within yourself do not simply disappear. They accumulate in the dark reservoir of the unconscious. When you refuse to acknowledge these hidden qualities, the psyche forces you to confront them externally. The outer world becomes a mirror reflecting your own disowned nature. You interpret this external confrontation as an accidental occurrence or a stroke of bad luck. This is the exact mechanism that shapes what humans mistakenly call fate. Suppressed psychological material actively projects itself onto people, events, and choices. You find yourself repeatedly entering destructive relationships or failing at the same critical moments. The ego experiences these patterns as external assaults from an uncaring universe. It refuses to see that the external enemy is actually an internal reality demanding recognition. Your life choices are guided by the very forces you reject. This dynamic reveals a deeply unsettling truth about human free will. The conscious ego believes it sits at the controls of identity, making deliberate and reasoned choices. It takes credit for achievements and rationalizes failures as external interference. This sense of independent autonomy is a carefully constructed fiction. Your long-term decisions are often finalized in the dark before you ever think them. The ego acts as an executive who signs a contract that has already been written by an invisible committee. It validates choices that were predetermined by the autonomous movement of the unconscious psyche. This realization shatters the modern obsession with total self-control. You are forced to admit that you are not the absolute master of your own mind. Yet, this internal displacement is not a sentence to hopeless paralysis. It is a necessary and brutal awakening. The neat illusions of the conscious ego must fracture completely. Only through this breakdown can you begin to perceive the vast objective psychological reality that truly governs your life. The human mind never encounters objective reality in its raw form. Just as the human eye is biologically blind to ultraviolet radiation and can only perceive a fraction of the full spectrum, the conscious mind is restricted to a narrow band of psychological data. You do not look at the world directly. Instead, you observe a highly curated symbolic landscape rendered entirely by the Jungian objective psyche. Every object, person, and social interaction you perceive is filtered through ancient psychic structures before it ever reaches your conscious awareness. This internal filtering ensures that your experience of reality is deeply subjective. Objective reality is too vast and chaotic for direct apprehension. The mind requires a protective barrier to maintain its fragile sense of order. The outer world is effectively a hall of mirrors, shaped by internal archetypal patterns that dictate how you interpret meaning. You believe you are reacting to external facts, but you are actually reacting to the symbolic images your psyche projects onto those facts. This boundary of perception is an absolute law of human consciousness. This constant filtering explains the intense friction previously described between your social persona and your inner emptiness. This internal conflict is not a tragic design flaw or a temporary state of personal failure. It is a fundamental structural necessity of your conscious growth. True growth never occurs in a state of absolute satisfaction. Every expansion of consciousness requires the painful death of an old perspective. The objective psyche deliberately utilizes this deep emotional distress to break the rigid shell of the ego. This psychological friction acts as a cosmic anvil on which your self-awareness is forged. The persistent sense of alienation you feel within the crowd is actually a mechanism operating exactly as intended. It forces you to realize that your carefully constructed identity cannot withstand the immense weight of objective psychological truth. The pain is not meant to destroy you, but to shatter the comfortable illusions that keep you stagnant. The psyche creates unrest to ensure you cannot remain permanently asleep within a borrowed identity. You are being pushed to step beyond the narrow boundaries of the ego. The dismantling of your comfort is the necessary initiation into a larger reality. This realization leads to a terrifyingly clear contradiction that destabilizes your entire sense of self. You are the desperate prisoner locked within this invisible collective mechanism, yet your own mind is the precise engine that keeps the cage doors locked. You are simultaneously the victim of the crowd and the very crowd you fear. The human nervous system operates under strict physical limitations of cognitive bandwidth. Every single second, millions of bits of raw environmental data bombard your sensory organs. The physical brain cannot process this infinite chaos without collapsing into total sensory paralysis. To survive, your mind is forced to radically filter this overwhelming torrent of incoming information. It discards almost all objective data to render a highly simplified, symbolic model of the world. This selective rendering is not impartial or objective. The filtering mechanism is deeply biased, deliberately highlighting data that confirms your existing beliefs while obscuring anything that threatens your self-image. The brain prioritizes internal stability over objective correctness. It rewrites your immediate perceptions to maintain a seamless illusion of continuity. What you perceive as solid outer reality is actually a custom-built environment designed to protect your current identity. Your mind filters out alternative choices before you can even consider them. You walk through a world that has been systematically pruned to keep your ego comfortable. This structural reduction of reality ensures that you remain trapped within a loop of your own making. These invisible constraints do not remain hidden within the abstract mind. They constantly leak out through your physical body as autonomous behavioral fractures. You sit in a quiet room, and your left foot begins to tap rhythmically against the floor without your permission. This unprovoked muscular twitch reveals an underlying store of nervous energy that your conscious mind is desperately trying to ignore. Your throat suddenly tightens when a specific topic is mentioned in conversation. You clear your throat abruptly to force the physical constriction away. This involuntary vocal spasm proves that your body is reacting to a hidden psychological threat before your intellect can formulate a defense. Your fingers grip the edge of your desk with unnecessary force during a routine interaction. This excessive physical pressure exposes the raw aggression your social persona is trying to conceal. Your posture stiffens instantly when someone enters your field of vision. Your eyes dart away from a mirror to avoid confronting your own tired expression. Your shoulders hunch forward to shield your chest from a perceived threat. These physical leaks demonstrate that the shadow is constantly overriding your performance. Your body betrays your compliance through these silent somatic rebellions. You are currently looking directly at the blueprint of your own invisible cage. Yet this cold realization is the exact moment the cage loses its absolute power over your mind. A body sits motionless in the deep silence of an empty room, far removed from the constant noise of digital screens. The hands rest heavily on the knees, completely still. Yet beneath this physical stillness, an intense internal monitoring occurs. The mind silently tracks every breath, judging the rhythm and correcting the posture to maintain an illusion of composure even in absolute solitude. This unceasing internal surveillance reveals a profound state of inner division. A sudden tightening forms in the chest, accompanied by a heavy weight behind the eyes that makes movement feel exhausting. The thoughts begin to circle a single recurring doubt, repeating the same anxious phrase over and over like an echo. The body remains frozen in the chair, unable to break the momentum of the loop. This quiet paralysis demonstrates the absolute peak of the psychological conflict. Even when completely isolated from the gaze of the crowd, the conscious ego continues to perform for an invisible audience. You observe your own thoughts through the critical eyes of the persona, proving that the false identity operates independent of external presence. The social mask has fused with the internal observer. Every spontaneous impulse is instantly evaluated and suppressed before it can alter the physical posture. This total entrapment is not a permanent mental prison. It is the necessary diagnostic baseline that forces a realization of captivity. The weight of this self-monitoring becomes too heavy for the ego to sustain. The artificial structure reaches a breaking point where the strategy of total control completely fractures under its own absurd pressure. The constant internal performance is beginning to fracture right now. A sudden wedge is driven into your awareness, separating the one who suffers from the one who observes the suffering. You are no longer fully identical with the anxiety circling your mind. You are the silent space in which the tension unfolds. This internal division shortens your breathing as the illusion of being the master of your mind evaporates completely. The thoughts continue to race, but they feel increasingly distant, like a storm observed from a secure shelter. This shift is not a comforting resolution. It is a heavy, disruptive expansion of consciousness that forces you to acknowledge the vast, unmapped territory of the objective psyche operating beneath your feet. You stand completely exposed to your own deeper nature, unable to return to the safe sleep of collective compliance. The pressure peaks as the boundary between the observer and the observed dissolves into absolute clarity. The deep internal division now gives way to a spacious, absolute silence. You do not need to fix your anxiety or escape the heavy architecture of your mind. The frantic desire to change your life is simply replaced by the deliberate act of seeing it clearly. The illusion of the isolated ego fades, revealing that you have never been truly alone in the dark. The invisible structures of the objective psyche have always been present, quietly guiding your steps through the long night of your compliance. You stand completely still, stripped of all false performances. In this unmovable quiet, you realize that your long captivity was actually an ancient, silent partnership, and the depths of your mind are finally looking back at you.